Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone.
Authorities in San Mateo, California say that a Pasadena doctor is facing serious charges this week after he allegedly drove himself and his family off of a notorious cliffside in what investigators believe was now a deliberate act. The incident began just before 11 a.m. on January 2nd when 42-year-old Dharmesh Patel was driving his Tesla along the Pacific Coast Highway about 15 miles south of San Francisco. Inside the car at the time with him was his 41-year-old wife Nea, as well as their 7-year-old daughter and 4-year-old son. According to reports, as the vehicle approached an area of the highway without guardrails called Devil's Slide, suddenly it careened off. The Tesla then plunged a terrifying 250 feet, tumbling over multiple times before slamming down right side up on some rocks below. It was pinned between the cliff face and was just yards away from the ocean. In what authorities have called a miracle, all 4 people inside the Tesla survived the horrifying crash. A subsequent rescue effort reportedly took several hours, requiring emergency workers to rappel down the cliffside and bring in helicopters to assist. Firefighters used the jaws of life to get the trapped family, pulling the 2 young kids out of the vehicle's back window and raise them up the cliffside in a rescue basket. The 2 adults, meanwhile, were apparently hoisted up via helicopter and then flown directly to a hospital. All 4 are now said to be recovering. While Devil's Slide is notorious for fatal traffic accidents, authorities say they do not believe that this is one of those incidents. Instead, they have pointed the finger directly at Dharmesh Patel, saying that they believe he intentionally drove himself and his family off of the cliff. Though it's unclear exactly what evidence police found to reach this conclusion, they have said that they are still investigating the vehicle itself for clues. No motive behind the alleged crime has yet been provided. At the time of this recording, Patel has been charged with multiple offenses, including attempted murder and child abuse. The situation is still developing.
Authorities in the city of Johnstown, Pennsylvania say that a local 42-year-old man is facing charges this week following a recent incident in which he allegedly held a delivery man hostage over a can of soda. According to reports, the situation began sometime on December 15th when 42-year-old Leo Lamont Tony called in an order for delivery at Primo's Pizza. When one of the restaurant's drivers arrived at Tony's Maple Avenue apartment a short time later, it started off as a routine delivery. Tony came outside, the food was handed over, payment was made, etc. It was when the delivery driver went to leave, however, that all hell apparently broke loose. It turned out that the delivery driver had forgotten to bring a can of soda that Tony had ordered. Now, in any normal situation, this probably could have been handled in a number of reasonable ways. Perhaps the driver could have come back with the drink, or maybe he could have given Tony a refund. Unfortunately, as I think we've all figured out by now, this was no normal situation. As a result, Tony reportedly skipped right over these options and went right for option C. After allegedly flying into a rage almost instantly over the missing soft drink, Tony reportedly grabbed the delivery driver and pulled him into his apartment. Once inside, he locked the door behind them and refused to allow the man to leave. Thankfully, the delivery driver acted quickly, managing to push past Tony and escape from the apartment before the situation escalated even further. Once safely back in his car, the man called police. According to reports, police arrested Tony at his apartment a short time later. He has now been charged with 1 count of false imprisonment. As a side note, authorities say that when the 42-year-old was interviewed after being taken into custody, he smelled of alcohol and had slurred speech. So, maybe he did in fact need that soda after all. Or, just a giant cup of water.
Authorities in Wyandotte County, Ohio say they're investigating a terrifying and senseless murder this week after a young woman was murdered while working at a local dollar store. According to reports, the incident began just before 4:30 p.m. on New Year's Day when police in the city of Upper Sandusky received a 911 call about a violent attack at a Dollar Tree store. Witnesses stated that the man had walked into the store wielding what appeared to be a machete and had attacked one of the employees there. When officers arrived at the scene, they found the employee in question, 22-year-old Karis Riebel, as described. Sadly, there was nothing anyone could do, as she was pronounced dead from her injuries at the scene. Though witnesses told police that the attacker had fled the scene in a maroon-colored SUV, officers did not have to track the man down. According to reports, the suspect, later identified as 27-year-old Bethel Bekele, turned himself in at a nearby police station. While authorities are still investigating the brutal crime, so far they do not believe that Bekele and Karis knew each other. Instead, they say the murder was likely random. Adding another layer of tragedy to the case is the fact that Karis likely wasn't going to be working at the Dollar Tree store where she was killed for much longer. The 22-year-old had just graduated from college and was looking forward to starting a new career. She had also gotten married just a few months ago and was in the process of building a life with her new husband. At the time of this recording, Bekele remains in police custody and has been charged with murder. Authorities say that more charges are likely to follow.
Authorities in Polk County, Florida say that a couple of suspected burglars are facing charges this week after one of them apparently made the bizarre choice to call 911 during the middle of one of their alleged crimes. According to reports, the situation began sometime in the early morning hours of New Year's Eve when police in the community of Poinciana received a call about a burglary at a local Dollar General store. By the time officers arrived at the scene, the perpetrators had fled. But thanks to the store's surveillance cameras, they were able to identify one of the suspects, a 23-year-old man named Martin Gonzalez Garcia. While authorities initially weren't sure where to find Martin, their luck continued just a few hours later when police received a mysterious 911 call. The caller hung up before saying anything, but authorities were able to trace the call to a local residence. They arrived at the scene to find an unsecured door, which they entered through to see if everything was okay. Once inside, officers quickly came face to face with none other than Martin, as well as his girlfriend, 22-year-old Liz Roldan Ocasio. The two were allegedly in the middle of another burglary, only this time, bizarrely, they had called the cops on themselves. According to police, an explanation behind the whole strange series of events was reportedly offered by Liz after she and Martin were taken into custody. The 22-year-old admitted that she had been the one who had made the mysterious hang-up 911 call. The reason? She said that she had planned to ask police for help moving their belongings, aka the items they were allegedly stealing from the house. Oh yeah, and she and Martin needed a ride to the airport because they had planned to spend the weekend in New York. During another interview, Martin also reportedly admitted to burglarizing the Dollar General store. Needless to say, Martin and Liz never did make it to New York that weekend. Instead, police joked on their Facebook page that the couple were being given different accommodations at the Polk County Jail. According to reports, the couple have each been charged with one count of burglary of a residence. Martin has also been charged with burglary and theft related to the Dollar General incident.
Authorities in Scott County, Indiana say that a 34-year-old woman is facing numerous charges this week following a bizarre incident in which she allegedly kidnapped a child and then ran naked down the street while trying to evade police. According to reports, the incident began sometime on January 2nd when police in the city of Austin were flagged down by the husband of 34-year-old Brittany Hurt. The man said that he was at home when all of a sudden his wife arrived at their residence with an 8-year-old child that wasn't theirs. After handing the child off to her husband, Hurt had allegedly taken off her clothes, grabbed 2 white trash bags, and proceeded to run down the street. When police caught up with Hurt, they reportedly found her just as her husband had described. She was uncooperative and apparently attempted to attack officers before finally being handcuffed. Even after being placed in the back of a patrol car, though, Hurt reportedly continued to try and get away. She allegedly kicked at the vehicle's back windows and also refused to put on clothes that her husband had brought for her. While being taken in for examination, Hurt reportedly started to make strange and unsettling comments. She kept talking about how all of the children were being taught by computers and saying that all the children needed to die. When police spoke to witnesses, they learned that Hurt had abducted the 8-year-old girl that she left with her husband from the playground of a local Austin elementary school. Surveillance footage showed that she had climbed the fence of the school and approached the victim before leading her back to the fence and hoisting her over. According to police, this was actually the second child she attempted to kidnap that day. A short time earlier, Hurt had allegedly approached another girl, grabbed her wrist, and said, quote, "Let's start a family." The child reportedly managed to break free of Hurt's grip and ran away. At the time of this recording, Hurt is facing multiple charges, including kidnapping, battery to a public safety official, criminal trespass, resisting law enforcement, public nudity, and public indecency. Officials at the school where the incident happened say that they are now reassessing their playground protocols and plan to increase security and safety for their students.
Authorities in Bakersfield, California say that they are searching for a couple of bumbling arsonists after they tried to torch a local business only to find themselves on fire as well. The incident began sometime in the early morning hours of January 2nd when the pair of suspects arrived at Servicio de Inmigración. The Plans Road business reportedly provides immigration, naturalization, and tax services, mostly to farm workers and their families. Thanks to Ring security camera footage, we know that the two suspects were holding jugs that were filled with some kind of an accelerant, likely gasoline, which they proceeded to douse on the outside of the building. We also know that they were woefully unprepared for how quickly their fire would spread. When one of the arsonists bent down and ignited the accelerant, the entire area they had just doused whooshed up into a blaze. In an instant, the man was treated to a leg full of flames, courtesy of some of the gasoline he had evidently carelessly spilled onto his own pants. He quickly ran out of view of the camera, clearly panicked by this obviously unexpected turn of events. The second suspect, meanwhile, fared no better. After doing what can only be characterized as a cartoonish scramble away from the encroaching fire and falling twice in the process, he also ran for the hills, with what appeared to be his back and butt covered in flames. According to reports, firefighters were quick to respond to the scene and managed to put out the fire in about 10 minutes. Thankfully, most of the damage to the business was apparently localized to its garage, though the owner says that smoke did seep in and damaged other property. Some of that property reportedly belonged to the owner's friend, who was storing stuff for their car wash business in the garage. That being said, a GoFundMe set up for the business to help pay for repairs has already exceeded its $5,000 goal. As for the two arsonists, at the time of this recording, it appears that police are still trying to identify them. If nothing else, though, hopefully this instant dose of karma has helped them to rethink their life choices.
Parents in the city of Newport News, Virginia are demanding answers this week after an elementary school teacher was allegedly shot and nearly killed by one of her young students. The incident took place sometime on the afternoon of January 6th in a first-grade classroom at Rich Neck Elementary School. While details about what led up to the terrifying shooting are still quite murky, according to multiple reports we came across, it began when the class's teacher, 30-year-old Abigail Zwerner, was preparing her young students to move from their reading groups to go to art class. It was then that one of the first graders, an unidentified 6-year-old boy, allegedly pulled out a handgun from within his backpack. He pointed it directly at the teacher. When Zwerner realized what was going on, she reportedly told her other students to leave the classroom and move to another room across the hall. She then allegedly tried to speak to the 6-year-old, telling him that she would need to take the weapon. That's when the boy allegedly pulled the trigger, firing a single shot that went through one of Zwerner's hands and into her abdomen. When police arrived at the scene, Zwerner was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Though her injuries were reportedly life-threatening, it has since been announced in updates that she is now in stable condition. Thankfully, no other injuries were reported as a result of the terrifying incident. Though worried parents and members of the public are understandably demanding answers as to how something like this could happen, so far it seems that police have released very little information. At the time of this recording, it's not clear where the 6-year-old got the gun used in the shooting, or why he brought it to school in the first place. While it's unlikely that the young boy will be facing any charges in connection with the shooting due to his age, authorities have stated that someone else could still be charged depending on how the 6-year-old obtained the weapon. At the current time, the situation is still developing.
Authorities in Iron County, Utah say that they are investigating the tragic deaths of 8 people this week after a local father allegedly murdered 7 members of his family before taking his own life as well. According to reports, the incident began sometime on the afternoon of January 4th when police in the small city of Enoch were called about 40-year-old Tasha Haight. The mother of 5 had missed an appointment earlier that day, and the caller requested that police conduct a welfare check at her residence. Around the same time, police received a similar call about Tasha's husband, 42-year-old Michael Haight, who had failed to show up for work that day in nearby Cedar City. It was then that authorities learned another piece of concerning news. Just 2 weeks earlier, Tasha had filed for divorce. When police arrived at the family's residence, they were reportedly greeted by a horrifying scene. 8 people were found dead inside, including Michael, Tasha, their 5 children, and Tasha's mother, 78-year-old Gail Earl. All of them had been shot. Thanks to evidence at the scene, investigators now believe that they have pieced together the nightmarish situation. They allege that Michael Haight shot his wife, his mother-in-law, and his 5 children before turning his weapon on himself. While many members of the public have speculated that the Haight's impending divorce was what motivated the horrific crime, police have reportedly stopped short of reaching this conclusion. A lawyer who represented Tasha during her divorce case said that the mother did not express any fears about her safety prior to her death. That being said, members of Tasha's family now say that Michael removed several firearms from the family home in the days before the killings. In a statement to the media, they seem to suggest that this might have been a deliberate tactic on his part to leave Tasha and her mother defenseless. Both women were reportedly trained in gun safety and personal protection. Aside from this, the only other piece of information police have shared so far is that they had previously investigated the Haight family about 2 years ago. However, at the time of this recording, they have declined to release any of the details about this previous interaction. The situation is still developing. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a minute to thank our amazing supporters over on Patreon. As many of you are aware, our situation on YouTube always seems to be a bit uncertain, but our patrons help to ensure that we can continue to make content like this long term without having to worry as much about what surprises might be thrown our way. Plus, patrons also get access to 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. If you'd like to help support the channel directly, head over to patreon.com/crimezone to join. You can also find that link in the description below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and take care.